Phil Harris and Josh Phegan come together in an incredible fortnightly podcast, Dream Big, Move Fast.
A progressive, contemporary conversation on what it takes to be a dynamic thinker, leader, and role model.
Backed with over 2 decades of friendship, trials and tribulations that teach from real-world experience and what it takes to dream big, move fast. What companies sell and what their customers buy are 2 different things. Tom Peters. Phil, I fundamentally love this as a quote because, I happen to be into motorcycles, and one of the things that, they say at Harley-Davidson, and there's a great quote that the CEO of Harley-Davidson doesn't believe that they actually sell motorcycles. What they sell is the ability for a 43-year-old male to dress up in black leather, ride through small country towns and fundamentally think that people are afraid of him. Harley don't sell motorcycles. What they sell is the freedom machine. And you start thinking about that. Nike doesn't sell sporting equipment. They sell the power of a dream, but most importantly, that you feel like you're an athlete. Chanel doesn't sell a handbag. They sell the moment of significance that you're looking after yourself. People buy beyond the product or the service. They buy for what they believe that it's going to do for them beyond just the specific feature. They buy the benefit of the benefit of the benefit. What are your thoughts about this quote and what it makes you think about as a residential real estate agent?
Well, I think it's great because it's certainly, I've heard you say that before about Harley-Davidson. It reminds me of you definitely, Josh, because I know that you're a Harley guy and I'm not a bike guy and you are, but it certainly, sells that vision and that dream. And I think that, when you think about it, like what do we offer as real estate agents? Like we're not selling products, Josh. We're not selling motorbikes. We're not selling widgets. We don't actually have a formal product to offer. So ultimately, I think as salespeople, like we are selling that belief or that chance of a great outcome, from a sales perspective. Property management might be a little bit more different. We might be selling more around kind of security and safety and those sort of things. But I definitely think that agents particularly lose sight of the fact that we are selling a chance of a great outcome irrespective of any marketplace. We are almost selling that hope. So I think it's a great quote, and I think it sets us up for a really solid conversation here today.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? Like we all buy insurance and it's such an intangible product, and why are we buying it? Reduction of risk, the perception that something could happen. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, isn't it? Like on the probability of chance that that's going to occur. So when I think about it, when you buy a real estate agent, what are you buying? You got to start to think about it. So what does the transaction represent for the consumer? And that's one of my favorite conversations. So the sale of a property might represent the end of an era. It might be the beginning of a relationship. It might be that ultimately we're doing this because we're getting on with our lives and we're progressing, and that's, they're buying beyond just the sale or the transaction. The tenant, it's exactly the same thing. The landlord, it's exactly the same thing. They're buying financial wealth. They're buying a safety net for themselves. They're buying a future for themselves. And that's what you've got to start thinking, is that like, it's beyond just the deal. And then like that's, I think that was in Unhospitality. William Garudo wrote a book about that. And he was saying that he's there, right? And he had the Union Square project, which you might remember in San Fran, one of the most successful restaurants of all time. And they were there and they were like, okay, cool. And he's got this family and they've got this 21-year-old daughter, and they're walking, they're celebrating her 21st birthday, and that's the legal drinking age for America. So they're having a glass of champagne to celebrate. And, it's all fun and exciting. And then he walks over to this other table and there's this lady, and, she's sort of like mid-60s and, she's there on her own, and, she's got this tear coming from her eye. And he's like, this is weird because over here we're celebrating and cheersing champagne. And over here I've got this lady who's literally got this tear from her eye. And as he opens up the conversation with her, he finds out that literally 3 weeks before that her husband has passed away and all the family have now gone. And this is her first meal out as a widow, trying to face the world without her husband. And he goes, it's unbelievable because in hospitality, we are there to help people to celebrate their most incredible moments, but also too to give people a moment of solace in their most painful ones. And you start thinking about that because you could have just said they serve steak and fries, right? But at the end of the day, you realize that they're actually facilitating some really important moments for people in their lives and understanding how that comes together. Now, Phil, today we're going to talk about unlocking powerful thinking models. And I think that you and I have both been through a large amount of this, and ultimately, the size of your life is determined by the size of your thinking. And if you start thinking about what you could go to create, if I'd have gone back to Phil Harris when I first met you and said, hey, Phil, I've now got a crystal ball here, man, and this is where we're going to see you in 20 years' time. Is this where you thought that you were going to end up?
Yeah, I mean, it's, when I first met you going back many years ago, the first goal. I always had a goal of wanting to own my own organisation, but I think that the goal initially was to maybe have 10 to 15 staff and keep it relatively small and boutique. And today over 200 staff. It probably hasn't quite gone according to plan of what the initial mission was. But I like this saying, Josh, which is most people overestimate what they can achieve in a year and they underestimate what they can achieve in a decade. And that quite didn't mean much to me maybe going back 10 years ago, but it certainly does now. And I've learned the power of it's really important to have long-term big thinking whilst at the same time having reality of what needs to be done in the day-to-day moments and looking a little bit more closely in terms of that 1-year plan. But definitely, big vision over a long period of time.
And how many people feel, do you think, like literally life happens to them versus how many people actually have got a bit of a plan on actually where they want to go?
I think vast majority of people are drifting, and if you said to most people, have you actually got some goals written down? I think it's something like only 1 in 10 people actually have a documented goal in terms of where they want things to be. And I know this from my own experience, Josh, just by simply having a vision. And by the way, with the goals that I have in my life, Josh, like I do have structured goals of 1-year goals and 3-year goals and 5-year goals and 10-year goals. And then on top of that, Josh, I have what I call dream goals, which is just kind of like just crazy vision goals. Like it's almost kind of a bit embarrassing. I don't share them with others, but they're written on a page or in a product that I use to actually to do that goal setting. I don't share them with others because they almost kind of sound a little bit ridiculous, but I can say that from a business perspective where I am now, like it is ridiculous compared to where I thought I was going to be 13 years ago. So most people, yes, they don't have documented goals. If you haven't got documented goals, then life is happening to you. But when you start to put some system and process in place and you wake up every single day and you go, right, these are my goals for the next 1 year, 3 year, 5 years. Okay, well, what have I done today to move myself a little bit closer to where it is that I actually want to go, right? All of a sudden, kind of subconsciously, you'll actually start doing things that actually force you to go in the direction of your dreams. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you haven't got designated goals, which is why goals are so important, that if you haven't got designated goals in place, you are drifting. So the answer is yes, life is happening to them.
Okay, so let's go through some really powerful thinking models. I'm going to take you through a couple first and then we'll start to get into some conversation around it. So Phil, I need to let you know something, and I'm actually here from the future. So I've been to see where you go. And I'm going to take you through a little exercise called the Journey to the Afterlife. And what I can tell you is that in 5 years' time, I'm going to be sent down to Earth to collect you and to take you to the afterlife. So your time here on Earth will be finished. And what we're going to do is that when I get you and we're going to take you up there, it's going to be a long journey, right? So we're going to have to stop off at a hotel. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask you at that hotel to tell us that the moment of your life which you thought was like the epitome of the person that you'd become. So give us the moment when you were truly at your best, at your happiest, at your most amazing, where you actually felt that like that was the epitome, like the moment. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to go and recreate that moment in all of its incredible glory. And we're going to film it and we're going to produce it and we're going to get like multiple camera angles, you name the story, high production values. And then ultimately we're then going to give you that moment, like literally on a device so that you can rewatch it. But every other moment in your life is actually going to be deleted. Which moment are you going to choose?
You're actually asking me this?
Yeah. So then you got to choose.
Okay. Well, my moment would be the quiet moment of probably sitting on my couch with my wife and my 3 children.
Right. So there's that connection moment, and you guys are together, and there's happy laughter, and there's things that are going on. Okay, great. And now, congratulations, we're now going to give you 10 bonus moments. So you get to choose your best sporting moment, your best real estate moment, your best auctioneering moment, your best sport, your best like relationship moment with friends, your best restaurant moment, you name it, right? Now tell me which of those 10 moments what they're going to be, and how many of those moments do you intend to create in the course of the next 5 years, knowing that life is going to end. And so what we do in the Journey to the Afterlife, right, is it forces you for a moment to actually go, what do you actually hold most dear? And how much of what you're going to do in the next 5 years do you intend to create versus how many of them are moments that happened in the past that were kind of randomized or that you were lucky that they occurred? That's the Journey to the Afterlife. Pretty powerful, right?
Really powerful exercise.
So that's kind of interesting. And then the second conversation is that Arianna Huffington had this one called The Train. So Phil, I want you to imagine that you and I are on a train right now, and we're on the train and we're looking outside and you can see some incredible scenery and it's phenomenal. And you inadvertently fall asleep. It's a long train journey. And you wake up and the train's coming to a stop. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I think this is my stop. So all of a sudden you go and you rush to quickly grab your bag and you get off the train. And the train goes. And all of a sudden you look around and you are there in like the greatest nightmare of an experience ever. Like it's a terrible conditions. It's horrible. It's awful. It's just not where you want to be. How much longer are you going to stay on the platform before you're actually just going to jump on the next train and get the hell out of there and get back to a better set of conditions?
You want out ASAP.
Right. So that's another powerful thinking model, isn't it? Right. So if you've arrived at a situation in your life where you don't want to be, how long are you going to stay there before you get on the next train and get out of there? So that's kind of interesting, right? So you start thinking about what that would be. So that's the train analogy. So you start having a bit of a conversation. Okay, great. Phil, here's a third thinking model. Okay, great. So now you're in a rally car and you've been going around the rally circuit, right? And you're good at this. You're going around the rally circuit and things are great. And in fact, you have got so confidence with the rally track. What's actually happened is that like, this time around, you've gone out this morning, you've decided not to take your navigator with you. Right? So you're out there and you're in a classic one with no navigation. You're like, yeah, woo. And man, you've just gone over this jump and now you've landed in a section of the rally track that you've never ever been before. And you can't see it and it's muddy and that's got the windscreen all kind of gone and there's dust now coming up in a different set of the track. And like all you got to do, man, is you just got to keep on sliding around the corners and just keep flooring it down the straights and you just got to try to make it until you get to the outcome. Welcome to what COVID was, or that era of lockdowns, right? You didn't know what was going to happen, but you just kept on pushing on. So what they are is that they're like great little stories, analogies to get you to think differently about reflection and projection, about the conversation around the rally car, the conversation around the train, don't stay in situations you don't want to be in. And they're really like good thinking models to get you to think. And to me, I often will use those in coaching to change people's perspectives about what they can go to create. And then I move that into some very clear conversations. And I think that you and I had first discovered it with David Allen and you and getting things done around horizons of focus. And so at 50,000, 40, 30, 20, 10, okay, at 50,000 feet, you jump out of the plane. What do you see? You see the Earth. At 40,000, you start to zoom in on Australasia and Oceania. At 30,000 feet, you start to see South Australia. At 20,000 feet, you start to see Adelaide. At 10,000 feet, you start to see Rundle Mall. And at 0 feet, you're actually walking down Kent Town past the Harris office. So like they're the different levels of perspective. And so now I take you out and I go 25, 10, 5, like literally a year and then, maybe the next quarter and then this month. And so, okay, great. So, take Phil Harris now and you add 25 years. What does life look like? Are you still working? Are you still married? Do you still have kids? Are your son's 21st? Like all of those things that you start doing. Then you zoom it in to the next 10 years. So maybe you've got some assets you've got to pay off. You've got to get kids into high school or out of high school, whatever. And then you start thinking 5 years down the track. And for a lot of people, that's probably paying out the car loan or whatever. Then you start thinking about 1 year down the track. And that's, probably what are we doing this year? And then start thinking about what are we doing this next quarter? What's important in this school term? Then we start zooming into, okay, what are we doing this month? And then, okay, great. We're going to do that little breakaway. And what are we doing this week? We're going to do that on Saturday night. And then we're going to zoom in into what are we doing today? Or I've got to pick up those steaks for dinner tonight, and then what am I doing in the next hour, and then what am I doing in the course of the next 30 seconds? And the inconsequential little decisions leads to the big stuff. How important has horizons of focus been to you to help you to change how you think? When you start to think more long-term and more projected, particularly around your balance sheet conversation and what you're building, but also too around functional health in how you operate as a person so that you're still going to be able to walk and pull yourself out of a car at 70.
I think for a lot of people, Josh, unless you're introduced to this at an early age, I don't think it comes easily to people to think to sit down and have a conversation about what your life looks like in 25 years' time. I'm not sure that really comes naturally to a lot of people. I know it certainly didn't come naturally to me. It wasn't until other people introduced those types of conversations to me that I actually started thinking about that. But once you do, in fact, actually cross the line and say, right, I'm going to give myself permission to go, okay, in the quiet of my own home or in the privacy and the trust of someone, I'm going to start thinking about where do I want my life to be in 25 years' time? It's amazing the actions that come off the back of that. And you start to realize, okay, well, if this is where I want my life and my family to be in 25 years' time, well, then there's a certain set of behaviours and values that I now start to embrace on a daily basis to actually have me ending up at that point. So I think, first and foremost, just give yourself permission to actually do it. And then secondly, start to look at what is the actual daily plan now that's actually going to be enable me to go on and live that life.
Yeah, it's so funny. I watched The Matrix, and that movie was profoundly different for me. It changed a lot of things because it's like red pill or the blue pill. And, it's like you just got to make the choice. So, okay, in 25 years' time, do you still want to be living in the same house, yes or no? Do you still want to be married, yes or no? Do you still want to have a great relationship with your husband or wife in that time, yes or no? Do you still want to be involved with your kids, yes or no? Do you still want to have some financial wealth, yes or no? Do you still want to have to turn up and work every day, yes or no? And so when you start thinking about that, it's a lot easier to kind of get some guiding principles to make better day-to-day decisions because you're saying, hey, what's the stuff I really want? And that's like one of the things that kind of I thought about in the very early days. It's like, okay, great, 25 years down the track, what do I actually still want to be doing? And do I still want to be operating? And do I still want to be healthy? And mate, I don't know about you, but I'd love to be able to pull myself out of a car. So I better do some weights today. So I've got some basic muscle mass to be able to do that. And that's what you got to start thinking about is that like, we never know when our time is up, but ultimately are we planning to be here for a long time and a good time? Let's make sure that we're actually leading towards that. Now we're going to introduce you to some other models, and these are really good for critical thinking. And the first one is motivates and matters. So I don't know about you, Phil, but like sometimes you walk into a training room and you do this a lot too, and someone will go, oh yeah, can you help me with motivation? And you're like, yeah, okay, great. And I think the great Zig Ziglar had always said that, motivation was just like showering. You need to do it every day. So hopefully you do it every day, Phil, but that's the showering bit and the motivation bit. But you start thinking, okay, great, motivates and matters. So, okay, great. If I said to you over the course of the last a little bit, what are the things that matter to you and what are the things that motivate you? So I go, okay, great. Things that matter to me, having a great relationship with my mum and dad, having a really good business life, having a great personal life, having financial stability, financial security, being in a position that I've got purposeful work to go towards every day. And one of the things that really motivate me, listen to a great song on Spotify, going for a great run outside, getting some sunshine, having a holiday booked ahead, having something that I'm saving towards to go to Dubai as, recognition for a reward for effort. How easy is that, to help you to understand the people that you're working with when you actually just ask them, hey, what are the things that matter to you and what are the things that motivate? And if they don't have contextual awareness of that, helping them to discover that.
I think, and also, Josh, I think that the motivation is a really important conversation to be had because I don't know about you. I mean, maybe you do, Josh, but I have days where I wake up, I don't really feel like going in and leading the company I don't wake out of bed, feeling awesome every single day either, right? But a lot of the time I do, right? Because I've got systems and processes in place. But it comes back to that initial conversation. If you haven't got goals in place, if you haven't got larger thinking of where it is that you want to be in 10 years' time, 15 years' time, 25 years' time, I can say on those days where maybe I don't quite feel up to it, it's because I've got those goals in place. I go, you know what? No, I am. It'd be so easy for me just to kind of check out today and not actually do it. But because I've got those goals in place and I've got systems in place, then all of a sudden I get into the flow of it and it keeps me focused on what it is that needs to be done. So I think that's a really important conversation that you're not always going to be motivated every single day. But when I align myself with the goals of what I want to do and I kick myself into gear, then all of a sudden motivation kicks in and I'm on my way.
But I love that. Like literally we sit down in a small team and say, hey, Phil, good question. What are the things that matter to you and what are the things that motivate? And if I can help you to learn that and build that, then I can actually help to work with you in that. And if I know that you get really motivated by going out to a beautiful restaurant on a Friday night, then when I see you do some great work, I might get you a voucher towards that. So I'm actually helping you to achieve that. If I know that you get really motivated by having an early mark on a Thursday because you can go home and you can look after your new baby, okay, great. Then I'm going to try to make sure that I can put that into the calendar so that you're actually there doing those things.
And outside of a workspace, but it's certainly something that my wife and I do. Like we have family goals of where we want to be in 10 years' time and 25 years' time. And I've shared that with you before. We've mapped that out in that life plan for our family. But what motivates us is certain levels of whether that be financial success or whether that be with property or things like that. But we've got goals in place. And so my wife is on that journey as well for us to work through that. So we're all on the same team working towards those goals.
Another great thing I love about these strategic T-charts is what we got to call agree on, work on. So let's say, for example, that we're putting a deal together and I'm trying to get a house across the line. So, okay, great. So Phil, what are the things that we fundamentally agree on? We agree on the settlement date. We agree on the solicitor. We agree on, for example, the conditions around a pest and building inspection, whatever the story is. But what do we need to work on? We just need to work on the price. And so what I love that is that often in a negotiation, people will focus on the one thing that we haven't got nailed, but they don't actually think about all the things that they've got going for them. Now, I use this in recruitment, in mergers and acquisitions. I use it in putting a deal together. In any negotiation that I head into, what's the stuff that we already fundamentally agree on and what are the things that we need to work on? Do you like that in terms of a T intersection, just to help you to isolate the issue, but also to give a body and weight to the things that are already agreed on?
I love it. And if you've got nothing else, Josh, in any kind of high-stakes negotiation with the buyer and a vendor, my kind of fallback position is there's good news. Good news is that the owner wants to sell it. Good news is you want to buy it. And thirdly, I'm here to make it happen. So if you've got nothing else, where do we start, right?
I love that. That's fantastic, right? And then there's also another great T chart is what we got to call can do, can't do. So all of a sudden you go, okay, great. So we learnt this, when all of those weird lockdowns and stuff happen around the world. I can't do these, can't do these, can't do these, but I can do these things. Okay, great. So I can't do face-to-face training, but I can do Zoom, right? So then you worked out a business model. But then later on, I then worked out actually we could apply our own restrictions. So let's say, for example, that you said, you know what, Josh, I can no longer do late night appointments every night of the week. I can only do a late night appointment on a Tuesday night. But what I can do is I can employ someone in my team who can do late night appointments on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I can't do Sunday open for inspections, but what I can do is I can employ somebody in my team who could do a Sunday open for inspection. So what it actually does is that if you apply your own restrictions to improve the quality of your life, then you look for a system or a person that can alleviate that pain point so that someone else can do that function. And I kind of like that. What are your thoughts about that, about being able to put some restrictions in play so then you can open up different thinking on how you would solve that issue with either a system or a person?
Well, I think it's a key fundamental of business, isn't it, Josh? If you want to scale, you can't be everything to everyone, right? And so we've had those previous conversations of people saying, oh, like, yeah, I want to be a $1.5 million agent. Yeah, but I still want to do every single open by myself and have to go to every single listing appointment. Well, the rules that you're enforcing are non-conducive to the outcome that you're trying to achieve. So either change the goal or change the process in how you actually want to go about it.
Phil, one of the things I do for market share penetration to help a business is that we often say that, okay, you got to grow the size of your sales team. And, I think, you forced me to go and reread. You didn't force, but you encouraged me, and I've now gone on rereading, Good to Great with Jim Collins. And one of the things that I was reading in that, it's an old book now, but it was about this whole idea that you're never going to take significant market share in any business without recruiting and growing. And so I just thought, okay, great. So you're always going to be at the wheel, and every person inside your organization has got a use by date on them, where either you're going to supersede them as an organization, or naturally they're going to need to exit the business. And so if you start thinking about that, you go, great. So what I do when I walk into any marketplace and I type in a postcode and I go, okay, great. Like who are the real estate agents that are in that marketplace if I aspirationally want to go to that? So I don't believe that you're in the Barossa Valley yet, but if you made the decision to go to the Barossa and what that would look like, then who are the agencies that currently play in that area and who are the agents that you could recruit? So what we would do is we would draw up a T intersection. We'd write down recruit on one side and M&A on the other, so merger and acquisition. Then as we went through all of those people, go, these are directors. Okay, great. Could we recruit them? Maybe not because of their business ownership requirement, but could we do a merger and acquisition with them? Yeah, well, probably we could. So you start writing down people that way. Hey, these are really good recruitment targets and these are the really good people at an M&A level. And what I find is a lot of agencies are completely locked on that thinking because, oh no, we could never recruit them because they're a business owner. We could never recruit them because they're a director. We could never recruit them because they're a partner. But they don't think about unlocking the opportunity in the thinking to go, hey, maybe they're a great merger and acquisition target that at some point they're going to need a succession plan or they're going to need a plan B, and we'd love to be that for them. And what that does, you see how that little T chart is now opening up how you're thinking about what the size of the opportunity could be. Is that an important conversation for people?
Massive conversation. As you know, Josh has played a huge role inside the growth of Harris Real Estate from both a recruitment and an M&A space. And certainly in our industry, I would say a lot of people are kind of locked in on either one or the other. And in fact, you can actually have a combination of both. So I think if you are looking at scaling your business, then obviously, as you said, a great analogy, go into a marketplace, assess the opportunity and see what's available.
I love this whole conversation, just unlocking powerful thinking models. One of the ones that we've also done is the level 1, level 2, level 3 agent, 30, 60, 90 transactions. At every 30 transactions, you add another person. Yeah, that's a great one. Another great thinking model is just saying, okay, great, stop, start, continue. What are the things that that I'm doing right now? I want to stop doing, I want to start doing, and what do I want to continue doing? I used to call that red light, orange light, green light, same conversation, right? And just starting to get you to think in different ways. Is there any other thinking models that you go to that literally are quick to you? Like even rule of 3, for example, when we present, usually there's 3 options. Okay, great, large, medium, small, all of that sort of stuff changes how you operate in how you actually execute with people.
It's probably a number of number of thinking patterns that I'll use. One, which we speak about regularly, is that good to great analogy, which is confronting the brutal facts. It's amazing in business where I find so many people like, oh yeah, but if I do that, then this will yeah, that's the reality. You need to address it. And I think the other one for business owners listening, Josh, is my default position. There are so many things that come across your desk day to day, and you would relate to this, Josh, that there isn't a playbook, there isn't a manual, and there isn't a checklist for a lot of stuff that goes on. And so there's always a default thinking position in my mind, which is what would a fair and reasonable person do in this situation? So if I'm dealing with conflict management, or I'm doing an M&A and something goes really south on the acquisition with the rent roll or whatever it might be, how am I going to deal with this? There's no playbook, there's no manual. Okay, let's stop, let's take a deep breath. From a thinking perspective, how would a fair and reasonable person think and behave in this situation? So yeah, there's a number we could go into, but they're kind of two that come to mind.
Yeah, the last one here that I really love too. So Phil, a brand new CEO comes into your organisation tomorrow and takes it over. What do? And it just literally rips the Band-Aid off indecision that's been happening in the business.
It's quite confronting. And the other one on that one is, would you rehire the person? You get a knot in your stomach. Hang on, if a CEO came into my organisation today without kind of any cultural understanding or loyalty or sacred cows, what would the moves be that they would make? Then secondly, would they rehire that particular person?
Maybe I should ask Mrs. Harris, would she remarry you, huh?
Don't know.
Okay, let's go to our final principle here. Growth should be a strategic, specific, explicit decision. And this is interesting. I think Naval came up with this one, and I kind of like that idea that the growth should be that. Like sometimes in life, you're either on a plateau or you're in a position that naturally you're going on a massive growth path and you're going towards the peak. And I think, peaks are awesome because you're clear about where you want to go. You've got direction. You're pushing hard. You're making that stuff happen. Plateaus are fine if you're there by choice, but plateaus are horrible if you're there not by choice and you don't know how to get off it. And so I think it's about that conversation. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think most real estate agents, or agencies, I should say, are kind of growth-minded via osmosis as opposed via strategically. I think it's a maturization of both the individual and the company as well. I know sitting here at 13 years in business, I would say that we are, at the time of us doing this, we are the most strategic we have ever been in relation to the growth that we are now planning for. So, I love that growth is strategic, but I would say it's the opposite of our industry, which is basically they're kind of going wherever the tide goes is where the industry goes.
I think the big conversation is that, it's okay to be on a plateau and you can be there by choice, but literally know how to get off it and don't kid yourself either. Like literally when the opportunity is there for growth and there's a peak and you're climbing towards something that's purposeful and it's driven, absolutely make that happen. Feeling good and ready for more? Thanks for joining us
on Dream Big,
Move Fast.